What's up, YouTube? It's time for a review of the new Sinsaenum EP, Ashes, out 3.5 weeks ago now, November 10th. So before this release date gets too far behind me, I've got some words that I've been aching to get out there about this EP. And I've had some of these notes since literally like the night it came out, so it's fucking time. So in case you're a metalhead and they kind of slip by you, Sinsaenum is an extreme metal supergroup, as much as I kind of hate that term, featuring Joey Jordison, formerly of Slipknot, on drums, Frederic from Dragonforce on guitars and contributing a large portion of the songwriting. Then on vocals you've got Attila from Mayhem and Sean Zatorsky, who was in the band Daath, and a couple lesser known musicians rounding out the lineup. Last year, their debut album, Echoes of the Tortured, was one of my most anticipated metal records of the entire year. Just because in the press, Joey and Frederic, they did a couple blog interviews, they appeared on the Jamie Jossa podcast as well. They were hyping up their music as just this head-on collision, equally weighted collision between black metal and death metal. Kind of something that's weaving together the 20-30 year history of both subgenres into one brutal, blasphemous, hideous, blackened metal record. And that premise just had me through the roof with anticipation. But unfortunately, when the record dropped, I did feel slightly let down because I didn't really get what I felt like I was promised. Realistically, what we got with Echoes of the Tortured was a 21-track record, which consisted of really 12 tracks of well-executed death metal in the traditional mold of Morbid Angel and Deicide, and then like 9 tracks of campy keyboard interludes. Look, I still thoroughly enjoyed Echoes of the Tortured, don't get me wrong. In fact, if you've been watching this channel for a while, you might have noticed the record just barely squeeze into my top 20 metal albums of 2016 if you watched through to the honorable mention section of the top 10 video. And to be fair, there were a couple tracks on there that did dip their toes into some traditional black metal. Like, well, I can't really pronounce it, but this one. Definitely a huge highlight on that record. I guess I was just slightly bummed that I got such a death metal leaning record instead of like, I guess the 50-50 fusion that I felt like I was promised or that I was hoping for. But I have stayed stoked on Sinsaenum, and when this Ashes EP got announced, I couldn't wait to check it out. Just the fact alone that a year later they're already back for more, it shows that they're serious. And this isn't just some casual side project that a lot of supergroups very quickly turn into. As a band, these guys have something they want to say and something they want to prove. Then about a month and a half ahead of this EP's release, I had a lot more reason to be excited because they released the title track to this thing, Ashes. And it was just this massive leap forward. First, the track kicks off with this mammoth tremolo picking riff that's given so much eerie atmosphere with these just screeching, dissonant guitars that are layered on top of the riff. And it's just like the auditory equivalent of a swarm of locusts just descending on this thing. It's given an underbelly of aggression and then atmosphere on top. It's evil, it's unsettling, yet it's this incredible adrenaline rush. And then the song continues by first pulling back a tad during the verses with these more restrained, palm-muted riffs. Then the chorus is anchored by this unbelievably catchy, melodic lead line, which between this line and that initial tremolo riff, just the memorability factor on these passages. They have stayed with me for hours and hours at a time in the 2 months now that I've been listening to this song. This song is not this burst of aggression that then you forget about. It really, these individual parts stick in your head. And with the chorus, that guitar line might be very melodic and very catchy, but the spoken word vocals over it are demonic as fuck. And again, they give the track a little bit of an atmosphere, rather than just being this straightforward death metal riff mania. Ashes is definitely an aggressive song, but for me, it's also a visual listen because it's nightmarish in its presentation. So Ashes, which by the way opens the EP, easily one of my favorite metal songs of the year. But then we get to track 2, Monarch of Death, and I mean, we get exactly, and I mean exactly what I had initially envisioned when this band was first being promoted. Monarch of Death, it kicks off with this initial flurry of blackened blast beats, which kind of remind me of the band Hate, especially on their new record Tremendum, which I loved. And then it segues into these slamming, like groove-based, almost Dying Fetus-esque death metal riffs, which, by the way, it is just a seamless transition between these two parts, which I think partly should be credited to Joey Jordison just with his smooth drum fills. So these two parts really light a fire under this song initially, and then we progress a bit further until around the 1 minute mark, where we're just hit with this wall of ugly, chromatic minor chords that are just vintage mid-90s Norwegian black metal. And at this point, I just could not be more impressed with this track. It's a wonderful blend of death metal and black metal. It continues to be for the duration. Another thing I like to point out is that I really enjoy how Sinsaenum they let their layered guitar solos really shine through like traditional metal solos, as opposed to the noisy, cacophonous, extreme metal solos that anyone who watches this channel frequently knows that I'm not a huge fan of. And the third track, 2099, another fucking knockout. Love the drums on this one. Love the vocals, which they briefly incorporate some of those hellish black metal gurgles alongside your traditional layered death metal vocals. God, this song is another one where just every single second is crammed with sick stuff that I want to talk about. Whether it's that marching opening riff, which is really well constructed and reminds me of Revocation a bit, or it's that really fun guitar solo in the middle with all those shimmering harmonies. And then honestly, this song has my two favorite musical sections of the whole fucking EP. A, you've got the two-part tremolo guitars in the chorus, fucking awesome. B, you have right before the 5-minute mark that weeping harmonized solo that sends the track off that frankly, Michael Amott from Arch Enemy would be extremely jealous that he didn't write it, especially on that new Arch Enemy record. Ugh. And then to close this thing out, because I'm not counting that new mix of Dead Souls from Echoes of the Tortured. Yeah, it's an improvement, but come on, leave it off the track list. Let Echoes of the Tortured be its own thing. Let this new EP be its own thing. Anyway, we get the two Japanese bonus tracks, Degeneration and King of Desperate Lands. Degeneration is definitely the most straightforward song on the EP, and it feels like an appropriate come down from 2099, which was definitely very maximalist, which you can probably gather just from all those moving parts that I mentioned that I enjoyed. Degeneration, on the other hand, it doles out riffs in a pretty logical manner. We open with some retro black metal, then we get a bit of thrash, then it kind of ping-pongs back and forth for a bit, then halfway through the track, things get a little more death metal with this, I guess, more intricate riff that has that modern laser precision to it. And then, yeah, this song has another harmonized guitar solo, and at this point in the EP, it definitely feels like the band are getting much more comfortable in their own skin. They have this excellent vocabulary in a bunch of different metal subgenres, and these subgenres are kind of laid out in front of them. They're at their disposal, and they're able to sort of intelligently pick and choose depending on what the song calls for or what they need to integrate at the moment. I would definitely say pretty much 100% the Sinsaenum sound, whatever that is, on Ashes is markedly different than Echoes of the Tortured. Then, for purposes of this review at least, the EP concludes with King of Desperate Lands, which is the least impressive of the bunch. There's a slight drop off here with a bit of a return to the Echoes of the Tortured sound, at least riff-wise, and we also get some silly keyboards in the intro, but definitely still an enjoyable song, still has replay value for me. It doesn't wow me like the 4 tracks before, and especially the first 3 tracks. But man, I am so fucking into this EP. It is just so well integrated when it comes to pulling from death metal and pulling from black metal and throwing a bit of thrash in there and elements of other metal subgenres and just making it all flow so smoothly. Some of the credit, again, should go to Joey Jordison, whose choices of blasts and grooves and fills just always feel so dead on and are always advancing the song forward rather than just keeping pace with it. In comparison with the band's debut, I think this EP is less pristine, less polished. It's a bit uglier, which I love. The riffs and melodies themselves are a definite step forward. And hey, I'll even give this EP some points for how the absence of color on the cover gives it more of that old school black metal presentation. Hey, I mean, packaging, presentation, image, it's all part of this, whether you like to admit it or not. So if Sinsaenum is a group that you've missed the boat on so far, or you've been kind of on the fence, for my money, their stock price went up with this EP. Now they've reached a very high priority for me when it comes to the next time they release new music, because I love what they're doing. It really fits with my extreme metal tastes, and I'm really hoping for more of this caliber going forward. Ashes gets an 8 out of 10 from me. As always, thanks so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe, leave a comment, or shoot me a message so we can continue to talk music, and I'll see you guys soon.